when I was a kid, I think we're talking about 18. I wanted to write a comic. Um, Something along the lines of I can't even remember the name now. Um, I'm gonna look it up. I literally can't find it, but I know it exists. Um, yeah, it was a comic inspired from this, and I took the title from Oggy and the Cockroaches. Only real ones will know that. But um, I worked on that in a friend's house, and I worked on that quite a lot, and it was largely script based. Of course, it was. I think that's sort of, to me at least, the way I'd work out a comic, and have continued to work out comics since. Is that it's largely script based. I remember seeing Mark Millar and seeing his process, and that was largely script based. Especially when you put out that one comic recent, not his most recent, but I don't even know. Um, and I think it sort of served a big purpose, a big point, right? I'm trying to find like a common theme for the video as I speak, but yeah, I think it served a really big point because it said to me that, like the 10,000 hour rule, um, like you actually aren't perfect right now, and you'll never be perfect enough to create the story that you want to create. Don't know what they're going on about, but you'll always have the opportunity through writing it to find that perfect story. You'll either scrap everything, or you'll either complete it, or you'll either just struggle and stop and all sorts of things. But through going through that process, right, you just get better at it. You get better at it. Imagine not building a chair and then building a chair and it's just shit. And you go back and you build another chair, it's still shit. But one of the legs are like perfect. And you're like, damn. And you go back and you go back and you go back, and after a process of many years, you're able now to build a solid chair. And I think that's the writing of any good story. The fact that you're able to, let me put this here on. The fact that you're able to go through that understanding, go through that process of being able to do it. Now, unfortunately, I think for me, I'm not actually in that stage. I think for me to actually become in depth in that stage, I need to take that leap into higher word count projects, bigger projects, right? Because I think for the most part in my writing career so far, it's stuck to short stories, poems, things like that, right? And at heart, I'm a novelist. I think that's where this sort of idea lies, is that I have a lot of ideas for novels. A lot of ideas. I mean, if I just take a look, these these pages are simply just full, right? Man came in. It's simply full, right? Like I keep getting more and more ideas as time goes on. Obviously, these aren't like this is about what I've tried to do, as in bullet pointing. It's obviously not worked, but I've got a lot of poetry I want to do. Newcastle poetry, but eco poetry. I'm looking at all the typical Newcastle stories I want to tell. You know, um, and I'm looking at all of the extra stuff. Some reason, some reason I want to do an analog. there's a lot. There's really, truly a lot of things to do. And a lot of things I think I'll find passion in doing, and I think I'll find comfort, you know. But point being, for the most part, right? For the most part, fuck me now. I got a quiet house. For the most part, yeah, I'll never be able to do it. If I take a look, for example, these two, Dubliners, Shuggy Man. Dubliners is a masterpiece, obviously, and it's beautiful. It is, because it's like, you know, basically a collection of short stories. But when I look at the challenge of what I'm really trying to do, you know, I'd pull out Grapes of Wrath if I could be asked, but you know, this type of, you know, each page is sort of yay long, and it's long, mind you. This is what I'm trying to get at, you know. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is to produce a story thick, dense, and honestly, I'm not even too bothered if it's like encapsulating, or like if readers love it. I'm trying to just fill up a story with all the details and all the ins and outs that I could possibly try, you know. I had a story idea the other day, which I had told my mate. I was like, look, man, we've grown up practically in the same neighborhood, right? Like a 5-minute walk from each other. And for some reason, you know, our lives are just completely different, you know. He's a black man. He goes to a Congolese. No, you mean, is he? No. He goes to a church with a lot of Congolese people. And I think, funny enough, I'd never really asked him where he's from. One guy from Zim, one guy from Congo, and him I never really asked. But we have mentioned it in the talk, in talks of like where you know, where he's been back home. His words, not mine. Not being racist. Stories about killing chickens and stuff. You know, and I just assume Congo because of the amount of people around. And I realized that, you know, even in that, right, there seems to be like a culture that doesn't mix, right? African culture, British culture, at least not of the early 21st century, right? I believe in the 21st century, 2000s and that. Yeah, there's not a lot of mix in that culture. So I go over to him and I say to him, look, man, I'm thinking about writing a story about just that difference, you know. Obviously, it's not groundbreaking. I feel like so many people these days have told me and have put emphasis on the idea that you have to write something which has never been written before, or it's groundbreaking. And I feel like you just don't need to do that. You know, the idea of me sitting here and sitting with my friend and saying, I really want to write a story about the fact that both of us are so close but so far. And it goes really down to the smell of the house. You know, I remember stepping stepping into my house as a kid. You know, and it's like, yeah, you know, this is the home, this is, okay, that's there, that's there, that's there. It's all normal, right? And even stepping into other white people's houses, it's like, oh, okay, it's like mine. Maybe it smells a little bit different, but it's mine, basically. I can feel the culture. And you know, when you step into a friend's house and all of a sudden you smell jollof, you're like, and pondu's on the stove, and you're like, no offense to any of my African brothers and sisters out there, but pondu is the food of the devil. I hate pondu, you know. I hate it. A lot of other things I can handle. I'm not saying I'm a little sissy boy, but you know what I mean. I can't do pondu, you know. Plantains too. People always tell me, like, what? Even white folk, you can't do plantain. No, I can't do plantains. Why? I don't want them. I don't like them. I acknowledge them. They taste somewhat subtly sweet. but not on my plate. And no pondu. Keep that thing 10,000 miles away from me. We had a cookout for New Year's. I went back to that old church, and God, the lamb was good. The lamb was unbelievable. But I was staying 10 toes down. I'm not pondu. Standing my ground. No. Anyways, back to the story. He grew up in that church. He grew up in a Branham, William Branham, that church, and that that coupled with the smell of the house, like even when I go and think about the people who I didn't grow up with, but he grew up with, people so far away. When I look at their house now, and I'm like, okay, you can really see the influences, and there's something I want to touch on there. It is the fact that we really do live in a period of time which multiculturalism is massive. It's almost everything, right? I'm not going to whip out a globalist theory, but multiculturalism is everywhere. Besides some places, but that's kind of political. At least in England, it's absolutely everywhere, right? And to me, it's the fact that there has been, now I think people are pushing so much for so many certain things, but I think truly in the early 2000s, especially growing up as a kid, you don't really see or you don't really hear anyone mention it. So it seemed like there was a barrier, I remember going to this one kid's house who lived quite close to me, young black kid as well, and he pulls out these Walker's crisps and he pulls out like a Worcestershire sauce flavour, and I'm like, is this a black thing? Like, do they like this flavour? And it sounds so racist, but it was that confusion that got me, and I was like, you mean to tell me, out of any other Walker's crisps you could have picked, you give me ready salted in Worcestershire sauce? Mind you, they were banging. But you mean to tell me that those are the two options? Not cheese and onion, not salt vinegar, not prawn cocktail, not roast chicken, not smoky bacon. You mean to go through all those clásicos and bring out Worcestershire sauce? Mind you, to be fair, it's not even that deep, because there are some rotten people in the world who like pickled onion. And that's fine. Eat what you want. But there was literally a shock to my system at that point, because maybe I'd associate the colour purple, when you had World Days at school and stuff, where they'd get you to eat a lychee and jollof rice on the same plate. I think I'd associate like that vastness of colour, or at least colour and patternry, like in that World Food Day type of thing. And the fact that there was a purple there had me shook. And every time I'd step into these guys' house, there was always this air of like, whoa, is this what blackness smells like? Which is crazy, by the way. It's like British blackness, especially in the north. Is this what this smells like? And I texted him and I was like, I really think that this needs to be discussed. I think that this is a really fun thing we could do with a narrative, right? And obviously, I don't think he ever was. For some reason, it seems like we talk about racism, but genuinely in the early 2000s, or even late 2000s, racism was just not a thing. In it sounds crazy, but in schools, I think I remember a couple of people like Samuel and Nathan, right? Portuguese, and Samuel must have been either Niger or Congolese, or because it wasn't that far off, right? And he actually lived very close. He was definitely darker than this other guy I'm talking about, and which goes to show, right? They never really got bullied, or nobody really engaged in that. It was just the fact that I think it was also a large topic of football. Football is really normalized, like a stage of integration between different cultures in in England, right? Because without football, you don't really have people looking at a guy whose name is um, Ricardo Gonzalez Bondito. You know, you don't really see that, and then have him score a hat trick, and just go, and then think, what a filthy Mexican. You know, you don't do that. You know, you go, whoa, he's a good lad. He knows how to score. He knows how to do this. He knows how to do that. He's a real footballer. And the fact that he's on your team, there's a camaraderie, there's an instant link. And I think that's the sort of culture that I'm sort of touching on, right? Is I think at that point there was definitely more of an integration and a recognition that there are different cultures, but they're still just people who can score goals, who play video games. We all like the same thing because we're all confined on the same in the same cultural structure. But once you step into each houses, the attitude of the parents, the smell of the house, the food you eat, the clothes you wear, right, the decor, all of it's just vastly different. And I feel like no matter what it is, you couldn't really ever bring that culture to somebody else's house because the culture of their actual house just predominates, right? And you know, when I would go over to his house, when that pup's about to die. When I go over to his house, there's no, do you want a cup of tea? You know, but I would never expect that from his mom. I would never expect it. Do you want a cup of tea? You know, there's times where she's like, do you want a donut? Do you want a slice of cake? Yeah, but obviously, there's just like things which are so simple, right? It sounds like I'm trying to make it so intellectual, but it's not. It's so simple. The fact that it's not a cup of tea that I get; it's something else, which is it's in that where I think there's something to play, right? There's something to play with. There's something to have fun with as a writer, um, because I do want to express the large amount of camaraderie that you have between people of and don't even go about saying we're originally very tribal folk, and that's okay, you know. So if you go and take my guys, you know, if you take one from Congo, if you take one from Zim, if you take one from um, poor, I don't even know. I don't even know where you want to go in Africa. But basically, so yeah, I had these three dudes where we used to skate. Right, it was him. It was the guy from Sim, and it was the other guy who I'm quite certain was French Congolese. And basically, that's a bit unheard of. It's obviously not. But when you think about it contextually, you're not really ever going to grab a whole bunch of guys from Africa and just plop them in the same room and be like, get along. A bunch of tribes, you know? I'm not saying, oh, look at I'm not being racist, but, you look at early Europe. You look at early Europe, at the Gauls, right? At the Germanic tribes. You look at the Roman. The Germanic tribes are not with the emperor. They're not dapping up. But for some reason, there's a very clear cultural barrier that we've crossed. As soon as we step out the house, the fact that we're in this place, there's a barrier that just gets destroyed, and sometimes it can pervade through. And when you're playing video games, the smell of the house disappears. Mine or his. When you're playing video games, it doesn't matter what food you eat, right? But as long as you lot are like quad screen, dual, like split screen on Black Ops Zombies. Maybe you're all having like a Nuketown Window Wars or whatever it is, right? Back in them days, as soon as that sort of happens, fades. But yeah, like I was saying with the never being bullied, he was never bullied, you know. But I think obviously for the story of drama and stuff, I may have to put a bully in there. But that's something I thought was worthy of being touched on. There's probably stories out there, and I think I'd like to do something with a dual perspective. And it's not that deep, right? But I'm also not like I'm so willing to let this one go to the wayside for quite a while. You know, because in the ideas book that I have, you know, I'm looking at all these ideas and I'm like, you know, I got so much to write. I think realistically, it's like the bookshelf, you know, having to take down one idea at a time. Um, it all the stories and essays I've ever wrote are like really shit. And honestly, I still continue to look at them as like bad. Even the ones that I'm not even done with right now, like the Yeti one. That's certainly nigh done, 90% of the way. Maybe I need some like drafting, but like genuinely, not a fan even. And I think that's because I'm very sick of short stories at this point. But to wrap around to the start of the video, you literally just you gotta do shit stuff, right? You gotta get that comic book and do that because that comic book, regardless of what happened in it, taught me dialogue. To be fair, this is shit that people have said so many times, you know. Just to voice what I'd got to. And it wasn't even that, right? Because I did another comic after that, and then I got into uni, and then I did like short story, like story after story after story after story after story, you know, trying to figure out narrator, time, place, actions, you know, and dialogue, and how the character interacts with the world, what his needs are, what his wants are, and all this sort of stuff, right? And it just seems as though you're a grown boy and you'll always sort of look back and say, oh, that one was this, that one was that, I could have done better. And I think that's okay because, well, quite simply, right, every project leads on to the next and then you just get better from that. And I think it's okay to sort of look at the stuff I've done or the stuff I'm doing now and say, so be it. So be it that I'm not in love with the work. It's okay that I'm not in love with that work. But I think I do need to get a level of satisfaction and purpose out of the work that I want to do. So when I look at all those ideas, I'm saying they, to me, are far more important than any of the short stories I've ever done. But the short stories are so important because they get me to that point, right? And I don't really want to say much more. I genuinely don't want to speak much more. But yeah, you know, I think the point that I tried to sort of make as a conclusion was just do that project, right? Like, oh, this is this is that, whatever. Just do it, because you'll have to do something, and then you have to do something again, and you have to do something again, and something again. You're not a one hit wonder, you know, and you'll never want to be a one hit wonder because I think one hit wonders are depressing. Um, you know, you want a career in this stuff, you want to keep writing, you want to do it for the rest of your life. You know, it's not like Lovecraft wrote Shadow over Innsmouth and just sort of like stopped. You know, there was everything else to put into place, and I think in terms of anthology, right, your life is almost like an anthology of multiple different pieces that you create, and you've got to create them. So create that dumb short story about what did I even write? I can't remember what I wrote. Oh, I do remember what I wrote. They are awful. They're awful, by the way. I'm not ever sharing them. But now I can look back at them and truly say, oh, without a doubt, writing that got me to this place. And I was able to formulate ideas, and I'm a better writer because of them. Because of how I can, well, you know, I look and I see what I can do better. So I think that's the topic of the video. Um, Definitely not a high quality video. Definitely not in love with the video, but maybe I'll be able to do better videos in the future because of this one. You know, right now, right now, right now. Oh, we'll play with words. Just do that and then finish the story you're at, and then love it for a bit, hate it for a bit, grow from it, and move on to the next one. Yeah, absolutely. I've got projects right now I hate, but you know you don't need to. Just love them and hate them. They're gonna help you learn something, right?